You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
And welcome to another episode of Haunted Histories with yours truly, Penny G. Morgan, right here from Parasearch Radio, ready to bring you the history and the hauntings regarding a specific time or place. Last week we looked at the Rhodes Hotel, a beautiful building owned by the Lost Limbs Foundation, and one that we were introduced to by the wonderful Jane Theresa Lynch. If you didn't get a chance to listen, feel free to find the show and all the others presented by Parasearch on both YouTube and Spreaker. We're always there for you. So, tonight, well, the place we're going to has featured on quite a few different TV paranormal investigation type shows. Now, whether you believe in demons, Zach Bagans, I'm talking to you, or you just believe that both negative and positive entities exist, the house I'm going to be talking about with the brilliant Three Girls in the Dark over from Missouri has definitely got a very nefarious past attached to it. The Villisca Axe House in Villisca, Iowa just looks like a whitewashed timber frame typical home of its time in Midwest America. The biggest clue to the fact it may be more than just the home of an average Joe is the giant sign outside announcing it as the Villisca Axe Murder House. And that is exactly what it is. The house, where on the 10th of June 1912, a most heinous and horrific crime took place that to this day remains unsolved, but has given paranormal investigators the ride of their lives when they have ventured into this property. The case itself is quite graphic, so those of a nervous disposition... Who am I kidding? It's nasty, okay? I know you lot thrive on that. It makes me feel quite ill when I read the details. But I do think the devil is in the details, as they say. No, demons, I'm not going there. I'm not going there. Well, on the 9th of June, 1912, a well-known and reasonably affluent Villisca family, Josiah and Sarah Moore, and their 4 children, Herman, Mary, Arthur and Paul, were on their way home after attending the Children's Day programme at their local Presbyterian church, which their mother Sarah had conducted. Because it was a late finish, around 9:30 p.m. or so, 2 friends came to stay with them as they were too scared to walk home in the dark alone, Ina and Lena Stillinger. It's believed they would have been arriving home about 15 or 20 minutes after they left the church. Well, the next day, Mary Peckham, the Moores' neighbour, was hanging her washing out and thought it unusual that the Moores hadn't started to surface by 7 a.m, as most days they were up by around 5. Mary went to the house and tried to open the door, but when no one answered to her knocking, and she wasn't able to get in as it was locked from the inside, she let the family's chickens out and went to call on Josiah's brother Ross. When he got no response after shouting and knocking, he used his key to let himself in. The first bodies he found were in the guest bedroom, the Stillinger sisters. He immediately asked Mary to call the town's primary peacekeeper, Hank Horton. Horton's subsequent search of the house discovered that the entire family and the Stillinger girls had been bludgeoned to death. Josiah's axe which was identified as the murder weapon, was found in the same room as Ina and Lena. Investigators also found 2 spent cigarettes in the attic, suggesting that the killer had lain in wait until the family were asleep. They believe I shall say he, as all the suspects in the case were male, but in all honesty, who knows for sure? They believe that he started with the patriarch and matriarch of the family, attacking Josiah so viciously that his eyes were missing from his skull. Then the 4 more children were murdered, ending with the Stillinger sisters. They believe that all of the victims, apart from Lena Stillinger, had been asleep when the attack began. They also believe that poor Lena may have been sexually assaulted due to the positioning of her nightgown pushed up to her waist, or at least attempted sexual assault. Obviously, as you can imagine, a slaughter of this magnitude led to a massive manhunt. Many suspects emerged, but there were 6 main persons of interest to the peacekeepers. Henry Lee Moore, no relation to the family, was also a suspected serial killer who had used an axe to murder both his mother and grandmother several months after the Villisca killings. For this he was arrested and served 36 years. Could it have been him? Sam Moyer, Josiah's brother-in-law, often threatened to kill him, although he had an alibi at the time of the murders. Andrew Sawyer was one of the many transients and unaccounted strangers who was rounded up as a potential suspect. He had got a job with a railroad crew in Iowa and had taken a lot of interest in the newspaper accounts of the Villisca murders, which the foreman, Thomas Dyer, noticed. It didn't help that Sawyer didn't endear himself to his workmates by sleeping with his clothes on, wanting to be alone all the time, and having his axe next to him as he slumbered. He was dismissed as a potential suspect because even though he had been in Villisca, he had been arrested for vagrancy in Osceola, Iowa, on the actual night of the murders, so had an alibi. Another person who was looked into was Iowa State Senator and businessman Frank F. Jones. There was no love lost between him and Josiah Moore, as Josiah had worked for Frank for some years before branching out on his own, taking business away from Jones. He's also rumoured to have had an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law, although there is no evidence to support this. An alternate theory to Jones himself having committed this heinous act was that he hired William Blackie Mansfield to murder the family. It's believed that Mansfield was a serial killer because he murdered his wife, infant child and parents-in-law a mere 2 years after the Villisca killings. He is also suspected of axe killings in Kansas 4 days beforehand, before the Moore family and their house guests lost their lives, and suspected of a double homicide in Illinois. One of the main things was all these crimes were very easily accessible by rail, or being close to rail lines and rail stop-off points, I suppose you could call them. A Detective Wilkerson of the Burns Detective Agency of Kansas City was adamant he had his man in Mansfield, the MO being the same in all of the cases. Sheets used to cover windows, victims' heads covered with their bedclothes, and the lack of fingerprints by the murderer because they were wearing gloves. Something which Wilkerson felt would have been of importance to Mansfield, as he knew his fingerprints were on file at the federal military prison at Leavenworth. The case against Mansfield was brought to court, but he was released due to a lack of evidence and a payroll record, which supposedly gave him an alibi in Illinois at the time of the Villisca killings. He subsequently won a lawsuit against Wilkerson and was awarded compensation of $2,225. Wilkerson believed that Frank Jones had some major influence in Mansfield's release, and also on the subsequent rearrest of the next person, one Reverend George Kelly. Now, if you see pictures of Reverend Kelly, he looks creepy. I will be honest in that, he does look creepy. He's also reported in articles from the time to have been peculiar, although this is actually due to him having had a mental breakdown as a child, as a teenager, an adolescent. He was accused several times of sexual impropriety, being a peeping Tom, and asking young women and girls to pose nude. He was also at the Children's Day service on the 9th of June 1912, remember, the one that the Stillinger sisters and the Moore children attended. and he's reported to have left town at around 5 a.m. on the 10th, just hours before the bodies were discovered. He also, similar to Sawyer, showed a fascination with the case. This aroused justifiable suspicion, and when Kelly wrote back to a private investigator with some very specific details regarding the killings, the authorities started questioning his part in it, although these could have been just very, very apt imaginings of a damaged mind. Doesn't actually mean he was there. He was arrested in 1917, so 5 years after the killings, for the murders, and police obtained a confession, which he later recanted. He was tried twice for the murders, but acquitted. Now, if you watch any program on now, any kind of paranormal type thing to do with this awful crime, everyone seems to jump on Reverend Kelly as being the culprit. But the man was 5'2" and weighed 120 pounds soaking wet. That's about 8.5 stone to you and I. So, looking at it logically, would he have had the physical ability to bludgeon a whole family to death with an axe? Not just one person, a whole family, and do it fast enough so as not to wake up anybody in that house? I guess this is one of those cases where we will never know who robbed this family and their guests of a future. I have my theories. I watch far too many behavioural analysis type programs not to, really. And if anyone wants to ask me what my theories are, feel free. But let's find out from some awesome investigators, Gina and Ryan of Three Girls in the Dark, who have been there, just exactly what they discovered.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
And we're now joined all the way from Missouri by two brilliant members of Three Girls in the Dark. We have Miss Gina Passante and we have Mr. Ryan Nelson. Hello guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good morning, good.
Yeah, good morning, it's good evening here. It's nearly 8 o'clock in the evening here, so I've got my glass of wine in front of me ready. The husband's just brought me it and my pizza's cooking. So, you know.
Nice!
Yeah,
That's
I know
nice.
how to live. I know how to live on a Saturday night. Well, thank you both for joining us. We're going to be talking shortly about the Villisca Axe House in Iowa. But just so that I can be a little bit nosy before we do that, for those people who don't yet follow, I don't know why they wouldn't follow you yet, but they may not, Three Girls in the Dark. How did Three Girls in the Dark come about?
So, a while back, I have always been interested in the paranormal. I've always been involved. I've actually been in the paranormal field about 16, Ryan, correct me, 17 years now.
Yeah, you need to change your number.
I know, it's 17 years now. I'm showing my age. I keep forgetting how long it's been. But, you know, and I was doing a lot of things by myself or with friends who were sort of interested but didn't really take it seriously and just thought that it was a fun hobby. And along the way, in college, I met Emily, and one day I was like, hey, I really want to check this place out. And she was like, I would love to do something like that. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, seriously. And it's just really hard to find people who are on a serious level about it. So we went and checked this place out, and it kind of just started from there. We kept doing tours, which I think tours are great, but we wanted to get places to ourselves and do things the way we wanted to do them and not have a bunch of people in there who were either beginners or were just there for fun, like contaminating evidence and everything else. So we decided to start our team, and we brought on a third girl. And in the beginning, it was just the three of us, which is where the name came from. When we started the team, we were just kind of like, well, what are we going to call ourselves? And we sat around for a long time trying to think of what's our team name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just sitting on the floor and I go, we're just three girls in the dark. I don't know what to I don't know what to call us. And it kind of just stuck. We're like, well, that's what we are, you know?
Yeah.
And then along the way, we started doing a lot of stuff and needed some extra help. So we got some crew members. So enter Ryan. Ryan's part of our crew, and he has his hands in everything, and he's amazing at all of it. So right now, it's Emily and I are the co-founders, and we're the lead investigators. And then we have Melissa, who is a medium, and she does her walkthroughs and kind of gives us information to use that we can't find either in research or history based.
She's a very talented medium, isn't she? I've watched some of the videos that you've posted of your evidence, and the stuff she comes out with is quite... And
I will be honest with you, in the beginning, we were kind of against using a medium, only because, I mean, I believe in that stuff, but it's so few and far in between, and it's hard to trust someone and build that relationship with. So in the beginning, we didn't really know anyone that we trusted. So it was hard to say, yeah, we're going to bring a medium on.
Yeah.
But after meeting Melissa and spending time with her, we were like, we're keeping her. We're like, she's amazing. She kind of blew us away. So we kept her. So she does her walkthroughs, and we kind of get spiritual information that we can use on our investigations. And then Emily and I and Ryan do a lot of the investigating and base camp and everything like that. So that's kind of the dynamic of our team, is we have three main females, I guess, which is where our name comes from, and then crew.
Cool. So Ryan, how did you get involved in it?
Strictly by knowing Gina, thankfully. I actually worked with her, and they were actually looking for someone to potentially fill a spot for their trip to Villisca in December 2016. And they were like looking for people, and I blew Gina up, and they kind of took a shot in the dark with me, and they brought me along. So that was actually my first experience, was the Villisca house.
Really?
We kind of went over, we were like, do we want to bring on someone new right now to such a big event for us, or investigation for us, that doesn't have experience? And like, so we kind of went over the idea, but Ryan was really excited about it, and we loved him, and so we decided that we would bring him in. It's kind of same like with Melissa. He was there with us, and it just felt right, and we kept Ryan.
I must admit, investigating Villisca for your first investigation is a pretty cool way to pop that cherry.
Extremely. I'm very grateful.
I told him, I was like, don't expect every investigation, because some investigations can be very boring. I was like, so don't expect it to be like this every single time. But it's a great place to start off.
Yeah. So Ryan, you'd never done any type of investigation before you joined the guys to do Villisca. You were a complete newbie. Correct. Wow.
And they brought me in, they unpacked the cars and start setting up tripods and the whole gamut, like the entire investigation experience I got. And I was not expecting any of it. You know, I did not know what was going to happen. And I just was kind of like an observer and would join a little bit. But for the most part, I was just like soaking in the experience. Like, whoa, they really do this. You know, like it was a really big production that I put on in Villisca.
Wow. That is a pretty amazing one to do as your first investigation. That's very cool. So, Gina, what would you say has been some of your favourite places that you've visited to date?
Man, this is always a hard question for me, because I feel like different places have different things or experiences about them that have really stuck out, and like some places have sentimental value, and just like it's a really hard question to answer. But like what comes to mind is one, Villisca, because it was such a wild night. It was one of the most wild investigations I've been on. Right, and then Beatty Mansion, which we have recently kind of become a part of with Apex Paranormal.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a show on Beatty in, I think it's May. They're booked in to do their show on that one. Thank you very much for referring.
You're going to love that.
Yes. They're awesome. So they have recently become the caretakers of that place, and we're friends with them. So they invited us out, and that's the second craziest location I've ever been to. I mean, as soon as I walked in, I heard like a female singing, and then we caught it on EVP. So I heard it with my own ears, and then we caught her talking, and like all this stuff happened that night. So those are my top two. But then I also have a place that no longer exists because unfortunately it burned down. But in our area, we had the Goldenrod Showboat, which was dilapidated and beautiful, and just there's so many there's so much history there, and I've had paranormal experiences there as well. So those are like my top three that I've experienced to date.
What about yourself, Ryan?
I unfortunately didn't get to see the Goldenrod before it met its demise, which is really sad because the girls, they had a really deep connection to that place, and I'm just really bummed out I never got to be there. But pretty much the same. So Villisca, like Gina said, was extremely active and was just like the whole experience of what you would want from a paranormal investigation. Every little thing that could happen, to an extent, happened. And then so Villisca, but then I'd also say Beatty, which I love this place. Me and Gina, we went on a total whim because we actually couldn't get into the Goldenrod for a planned investigation due to it burning down that weekend. So Apex was like, hey, we have the spot. So we showed up and did not know what to expect. And ever since that night there, me and Gina have just been like thinking about it constently.
I mean, it's like what you hope to experience as a investigator.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so
it's a hidden gem.
How far, because Beatty is it St. Joseph, Missouri?
Yes.
How far is that from St. Louis?
I think about 4 hours.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the clear other side of the state, basically, but it's so beautiful. It's in this little river town, and the house is nicknamed the House on the Hill because it's literally overlooking the downtown, and you can see through to the river, and it is just stunning. I mean, it's just, it's so big and stoic and cool, and I don't know. Plus, Apex is taking great care of it, and I love when people invest in the location. Also, shout out to Ashmore Estates in Ashmore, Illinois. It's also, like Gina said, it's kind of about like the experience of what you want. Like, I can appreciate sitting in a beautiful building, or I can really want something spiritual or something crazy to happen. But Ashmore is just a cool place to walk around and just soak it all up.
That's on my wish list to do Ashmore.
Yes.
I must admit, when I did a show on that one last year, I think it was, with Jay and Teresa Lynch. And the stuff they told me about Ashmore, and obviously I'd seen it on like things like Ghost Adventures and things like that. But then when they were telling me all about Robin and his involvement with the Lost Limbs Foundation, and
oh my goodness,
Robin, and I will say this every time, Robin is one of the best guys in the business.
Yeah, sounds it.
He has so much love for that place and love for other people, and I will always say yes to anything at Ashmore because not only is the location great and like the activity there and but the people behind it are in it for all the right reasons, and a lot of times you don't have that. Like, you'll have people just in it for the money or for the wrong reasons, attention or whatever, and some of these places might not even be haunted, and that's actually something we discussed as a team, is hype versus haunt. And it's like, are people putting hype into this location, or is this place very haunted? And Ashmore Estates is one of, just Robin is such a good guy that it's just a place you should really go and experience all the way around for
it's
every
on my wish list
reason.
If I ever get out to the States
and
to see
let
places.
us know, we'll meet you.
Don't worry, I'll be calling all of you guys up going, can I have a bed? Can I sleep on your sofa?
I think we're 2 hours from Ashmore.
So. Oh, is it all? Okay, yeah.
We'll actually be out there in the next. When are we going out there, Ryan?
Almost 2 weekends.
In 2 weekends, and we'll be there 2 weekends in a row, if not maybe 3. So,
well, I think one of the stories that Jay told me that I thought was the loveliest thing about Ashmore is I think he was conducting a small investigation there, the group he was with, and they had a busload of people with adults with learning difficulties turn up, and. Firstly, I thought, well, why shouldn't they do things like this? There's no reason why they shouldn't. Credit to their carers for saying They're still people. They can still. And he said the weirdest thing, or the strangest thing in a good way, was that one of the guys, he said he must have been in his 40s. He looked up and he thought he said he saw a little girl waving at him from the window. Now I think it's that little girl who's meant to be synonymous there, the one who died in the fire.
Yeah.
She was burnt, and her name's just gone out of my mind. But then he turned round to Jay and said, 50 years ago I'd have had to live here, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it was that
this
kind of understanding, but not in a judgmental or aggressive or just a matter of fact. I'd have had to live here, wouldn't I? And
I also think he said something along the line. Someone told me about this before, and it just my heart just exploded when I heard about this. And I think during that group, I don't know if it was the same guy or someone else, but they said they were doing like an EVP session, and he said, "Do you know that we don't get treated like this anymore?" And I was just oh my gosh, like. How crazy to, you know what I mean, to sit there and think like you would have had to live in a place like this, 50 years ago or something.
Yeah. But what was so interesting is because their brains work in they don't follow the standard A to B line that we would follow.
Right.
They kind of go A through to D almost, if that makes sense. They think about things in a slightly different way. And some of the questions they were asking, I remember Jay and Teresa saying to me, we'd have never thought to ask that, but it got so much response. What a brilliant question to ask. And it was just, it filled my heart with love. Yeah, it sounds a bit trite, but I just thought, and the amount of compliments we were getting from people saying, what an awesome story. That's just, but as Jay said, that's Robin through and through. Everyone deserves attention. Everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves, but yes, and no, Ashmore is definitely, and because one of the history things I'm very interested in is the workhouse movement, is the poor laws, is the how in Victorian England, especially in the 1800s. That's something I'm very interested in. So Ashmore appeals to me from that perspective, from a historical perspective as well, seeing how it was done differently on the other side of the pond compared to here.
Right.
Right. But so Ashmore is Ashmore's on one of my. But when I get out there, I'll give you guys a call. Don't worry.
We're only 2 hours away, so if you make it within 2 hours of us, we're coming out.
Well, we got to go out for a beer anyway, sort of have a bit of a beer, have a bit of a laugh, and we've got to get Ryan in those leggings, those trousers, those sparkly trousers.
They're already packed.
Oh, good. Ryan, that might sound a bit of a weird thing to say as I'm talking to people on Skype, really, but Ryan has the most amazing pair of trousers that have a sparkle stripe all the way up the side. And if you go on to, I think it was on your Facebook account, or was it on Emily's?
Emily's.
Yeah, and he's actually twerking on Emily's head in these trousers. But these trousers are just class. They're just pure class.
We like to have fun.
It was superb.
We take what we do very seriously, but we also like to have a lot of fun. So you can go see Ryan's twerking on Emily.
Oh, definitely. It's very funny. It's the look on her face as she turns her head as well. Just, I mean, I tease Emily about her resting bitch face in all of her photos anyway, but that was just perfect.
Right.
So, being serious for a split second, if you could go and visit somewhere else to explore some of the things that they've got there, or if there's any particular places you'd love to go, can you think of any off the top of your head? Gina? I would love, I've said this many times, but I would love to get out of our country. Like, I know we do a lot of it in the Midwest, and we haven't actually been able to make it out to any of the coastal stuff, which I would love to do. But, I have a strange fascination with Stonehenge. I would love to go to Stonehenge. I don't really know if that counts as like ghostly paranormal, but it's something I would love to experience. It is paranormal.
It's definitely
nobody knows what it's there for. Yeah,
definitely. I've always liked the idea of the ancient Ram Inn. I would love.
You've been doing your homework on British places, haven't you?
Well, I feel like there's so much more, and maybe not more, but older. Like,
yes.
It's a lot of old stuff over there. I would I don't have one specific picked out, but I would love to go to a castle. If you got a castle in mind, tell me which one I should go to.
We've got a few, mate. We've got a few. Yeah.
So I would love to do a castle. That's kind of
Same.
like a bucket list item of mine. So yeah, stuff like that, it really kind of holds my interest. I like very old stuff, and the United States just doesn't have that like there is in other places.
Yeah, no, I suppose, no, it doesn't. The Stonehenge one's interesting because Stonehenge isn't the only one that's got these stones placed there that they don't know what they were there for. There's quite a few, especially around the southwest in the UK. Mm-hmm. There's a few places, and I think Avebury is one, but the only problem with Stonehenge is you can't actually get up to the stones because so many people were touching them, they were damaging them. And so the only people that are allowed to actually, well, obviously the people who look after them, but are the Druids when they do their ceremonies, sort of pagan ceremonies throughout the year. But it is quite weird. It is quite a weird one because you do look at it and you think, how did they get them there? Those stones are massive. But it's an interesting one. In America, like we, our history, it goes back to the native people so we don't have a lot of buildings that were built, hundreds of years ago. They lived off the land and moved around. But the same with that is American Indian energy is very strange and weird, and we have a lot of it. And a lot of places we go to, that is a factor. The building sitting on land that has the land itself has a lot of history. Maybe not the building, but the land and the things that happened there. Well, that's one of the conversations I was having when I was talking to Cami Anderson, who owns Asylum 49 over in Tuele. Because I was saying, why would this building be so... And she said, because this is all Native American land. This is all built on. And it's an interesting that the lands can retain it. Very spiritual, magical people that I feel like their energy still resonates in those places. Yeah. What about you, Ryan? Where would you like to go?
Domestically, I would love to try and get into Waverly Hills. We've been actually trying to do that for a couple years now. Scheduling and money just doesn't make that one work right now, but it's a beautiful, huge place. I love the history with the tuberculosis outbreak and all the things that they did at that location. So that'd be a cool one. But then also to go across the seas, I would love to go to like a castle, obviously, just because it's a completely different experience than what we've ever had here. Or like something in like Ireland, because that's like, my roots, I guess. And I would love to visit Ireland in general. But yeah, or like old London, like Jack the Ripper kind of places, like just really cool. I want cobblestone and fog and horse-drawn carriages.
I don't know if we can do the horse-drawn carriages. We could probably pick a day when there's fog and cobbles. But I don't know about the horse-drawn carriage.
I want to recreate the scene from Jack the Ripper. I want to recreate that murder scene and see what we can get somewhere.
Okay. I love that too, actually. Weren't we just talking about... Oh, I think Chris and I were talking about this on the last interview.
Yeah, that's one of the things he'd love to know what happened or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper is an interesting... It is an interesting one. Unfortunately, a lot of the alleyways and stuff that he is meant to have frequented, they ripped down when they went through a phase of turning the East End slums into something a bit more, I suppose, palatable for today's generation. There's still some of the original pubs that some of the victims drank in. I mean, one of the groups that I'm friends with, they're doing an investigation at a pub that I think it was one of his final victims, Catherine Eddowes, was drinking in just before she was murdered. And so there's things like that you can do Jack the Ripper tours, where someone who's a really experienced, they call them ripperologists, will take you on a tour. It's true. They're called ripperologists, and they'll take you on a tour. Those are quite. There is actually a Jack the Ripper museum as well in London, I think. They do investigations at. That's meant to be quite an interesting place. So, I think it's one of those. It's always been something of anyone interested in either the paranormal or murderers. Yeah, Jack the Ripper is one of the first people.
Well, it's such a mystery. Yeah.
And there's so much infamy too.
Sorry, what was that?
There's so much infamy around his name. You know, it's just so iconic. You know about him anywhere in the world.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that Patricia Cornwell spent all that money investigating it, and I can't remember who she decided it was. The author, Patricia Cornwell. But the person she came out with, all the ripperologists were saying, no, it's not him, and this is why we're telling you it's not him. There was supposed to be in a Jack the Ripper's diary, was found 20 years ago now, 15, 20 years ago, and most ripperologists have studied that and said, no, this guy was just he wanted to be the Ripper, but it wasn't
right.
He missed out some fundamental details. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It is an interesting one. One of our co-owners of Parasearch Radio is a ripperologist, so him and I have had some quite in-depth conversations about it.
See, that's a person I would love to sit down with and talk to.
I'm sure he'd be quite happy for you to interview him. I'm sure he would. If you want me to put you in touch, just let me know and you can see if you can get him on your show.
Yeah, definitely. I will hit you up on that.
Okay.
That is so cool.
It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yes.
Right.
And if you want to go to Ireland, Ryan, I'm doing a show in a couple of weeks with Barry Fitzgerald on Leap Castle, which is meant to be one of the most haunted castles in the world.
Wow.
So there you go.
Okay, Gina, we need to go to Europe.
There it is. We're done.
Just make sure it's not the same time I'm coming across to you.
Right,
I know.
Right.
We need to coordinate this. Okay, so we've mentioned Villisca a couple of times. I think we need to start talking about Villisca.
Sure.
When was it you guys got to go there?
Ryan, how long has it been now? 2 years?
It was December 2016.
Okay.
Oh, no,
Wow.
was it 15? Gina, it's been a while. It might be December 2015 because I came on the team January 16th. Yeah, so December 2015 we went.
Okay. And was this a place that had been on your bucket list for quite a while?
Oh, yes. I was when we finally scheduled it, I was like, a kid going to Disneyland. And I don't mean that in any type of disrespect, because I know a lot has happened there and I respect the location, but it had been on my bucket list for a very long time. It's a place that I have wanted to get into really badly. So when it finally worked out, I was just so excited to get out there.
So what did both of you think when you first rolled up outside it?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, I have video of us pulling up to the location. And I videoed it from the front seat, the passenger seat, and all of a sudden, Emily and Gina are like, Gina's on the back seat. I'm feeling panicked. I am feeling panicked. Like, she's like, her, and then same, like the feelings of anxiety were like rushing over me like waves. It was really wild. But for me, it was more of like oh my God, we're really doing this kind of thing. But Gina, I think, because she had been doing this for so long, I think she was just excited, and it probably was like she said, going to Disney World, like they were just like in disbelief that we were even in this little town where this crime happened. It was just really a really cool experience getting there.
Okay. Can you add any more to that, Gina?
Yeah, so when we were rolling up, I was extremely excited, but I think it's kind of weird, like the closer we got to it, the more excited I got, but then when you actually see it, there's a weird feeling that comes over you, because as an investigator, you're excited to be there, but then as like a human, you start to realize like all this horrible stuff that happened, and you read about it and you process it, but then when you're actually there and you see the place, it becomes very realistic, So you sort of like take that in, and as we're rolling up, you can see the transition from us being very excited to us being like, whoa, we're actually here right now. And then the place itself, we got out of the car and sort of walked up, and the place itself has a very kind of somber feeling. It's strange. It's a very strange feeling when you walk up on the house. But and then we even, of course, had a stranger night there. But it's a little surreal. And the place is actually way smaller than what I had expected. It's a tiny, tiny house, but it's a very heavy feeling when you get there.
Right. Okay. So you walk in the front door. What's the first room you come into as you walk through the front door? Or the side door, whichever way it is?
Yeah, so what we did first was actually went to the barn. The barn is separated from the house, and that's where we set up base camp because we liked to keep base camp apart from the actual location. And the barn's very nice. So we set up in there, and then you come in through the back door, which is straight into the kitchen. And again, like you've seen this place on many shows. I've read about this place in history, and it's just kind of surreal. And I feel like when you get in there, for me at least, I had a lot of respect for the location and for what happened there. And you kind of just take a minute to like let it sink in, you know. But the house itself is in really nice condition. It's a really cute kind of like setup. But there's something very strange. Like, I just feel like if you're someone who's in tune with your body and uses your body as a tool, if you're investigating kind of like I do, you can just feel that something's a little off there. Yeah.
Was Melissa with you?
Melissa actually did not make it out to that location. And I will tell you, some of these locations, she prefers not to come. Because when we did Missouri Pen, which is, one of our prisons near our houses, it was very overwhelming for her. Like, these can be very physically overwhelming for her and mentally. So she did not accompany us to Villisca. But we had some of our crew, and then, of course, Emily and I and Ryan. And Ryan, this is where Ryan got his nickname Scream Queen.
I was going to ask that. I wasn't sure whether to do that off air, though.
No, Ryan, you want to tell her about it?
So we're like mid through the investigation. We've had all these experiences and stuff, and we kind of taking a break. And they go, hey, let's do an experiment where we, command a device through walkie-talkie from base camp, and everybody's out of the house. So they're like, Ryan, you go put the walkie-talkie in the kitchen, right? And it's a dark, stormy night. Everything's wet. I walk up the ramp into the house, and I open the door. And, of course, they can see me on DVR, so they know my every move. And they hit the call button on the walkie, which makes like a copy sound. And I went to put the walkie-talkie on the chair that's between the parlor and the stairs going up to the bedrooms. And they hit that, and I throw the walkie-talkie, and I almost fall and bust my butt because my feet were wet, and I screamed really loud, and it was good.
I'm sorry, and we're laughing at you now.
And we're all watching it from base camp, like warm base camp. We're just sitting there, and we're watching him, and he just screams and like throws, and then like runs out of the house. It was amazing.
It's like a paranormal hazing.
Yeah.
And from then, it's kind of been this like kind of joke, which I'm sure Ryan's annoyed with it by now, but like every location we go to, we try to recreate or attempt to get him to scream. So he is now Scream Queen.
Yeah, I'm usually good for some good reaction faces or noises.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so
hey, we had to break them in, right? So
well, yeah, it's hazing, paranormal hazing.
Exactly.
Like everyone's got to do it. Everyone's got to do a lone vigil when they first start as well to see if they can make it through that wetting themselves.
Right.
So nobody was murdered in the kitchen, were they?
No.
I don't believe so. From what I remember, so Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, because Ryan did an amazing job on research on this place, but the guy who murdered them had like a last meal in the kitchen, and he made some food, and he left food on the table, and he left like he covered the mirrors all throughout the house, and he left a plate of bacon, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a slab of bacon. And he also had a bowl of water with it was like bloody water. He had like rinsed off his hands maybe for the axe, who knows. But it was kind of just set up like he was just in there chilling and hanging out, before he left.
Because they believed he wore gloves because there was no fingerprints anywhere. And on one of the reports, actually, the bacon, they're not sure if he actually, I don't know how to put this politely, there's some reports thinking, let's just say he sexually assaulted the bacon because he couldn't.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't, because the Stillinger girl who was she was awake when it happened. They think he tried to assault her because of the positioning of her night clothes. They believe that he actually used the bacon instead because he couldn't assault her.
Yes.
Wild.
Believe me, when I was reading this in some of the research, I was thinking, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's disturbing, but I can see
the whole murder was disturbing. I mean,
Sure.
the how anyone could take an axe to young kids like that. A grown-up who's upset you could almost understand it, but innocent children who've done nothing.
Right.
So yeah, I didn't think anyone was actually killed in the kitchen. So we go out of the kitchen. You've got there was a small guest room, I think, that the Stillinger girls. But that was the first thing that the brother, Josiah's brother, found was the two Stillinger girls.
Yeah.
Where was the first place you started to do some experiments or set up equipment to see what would... Talk me through the investigation. Talk me through what happened.
Sure. So first we set up our DVR system in multiple rooms. I think that was one of the first things we did. And so that way we had eyes on every room in the house. And then from there, Ryan, was the first thing we did was try to redo the EVP session in the kitchen. Was that one of the first things? Because, I remember it differently from everybody else. So
no, and that's kind of the unique thing about Villisca is that we all have different recollections of timelines for that night. It's really odd. It is really kind of like a time warp when you're there doing it.
Right.
Because we actually, so Gina, we'll probably get into this conversation later, but Gina experienced something very personal in her account of the timeline, and like our timelines that don't match up with DVR footage correctly. We're just like, wow, like really crazy kind of mind gaming with, I don't know, the concept of time there. But I think the first thing I remember you guys do is the three of you went in and we were in the base camp. And you weren't in the house very long before you came out. Remember, you were stomping, you like swung the door open. That was the first. I think you guys kind of all scattered into the different rooms and just did maybe some quiet time.
That's right. That's right. So we did quiet time, and the three of us went to 3 different areas, and we just sat and listened to the house to see, because sometimes that's something we do is kind of like listen to the location and let it guide us and tell us where to go.
Funny enough, Teresa Lynch and I were talking about that last week. That exact same thing, doing that, just sit and listen.
So I was upstairs in the parents' bedroom or the parents' little area, and then Emily was in the girls' bedroom. And I remember that's when I started to have my personal experiences that I had at the location. Right. But I think we were going to go into an EVP session. But like Ryan was saying, is that I had something very personal happen to me there. And it is a very weird, time warpy, I don't even know how to explain it. But what I remember is completely different. And some of the things I remember didn't even happen. But when I was there, we'll just talk about what happened to me for a second. So everyone knows what happened. So we had brought an axe with us, which we kind of got some heat about. But I think people thought that we brought an axe to provoke, which was not true. We brought an axe as a trigger object to set up in the kitchen, because the way that the kitchen was left was the axe was left against the wall. So when the murderer left. So what we even got a slab of bacon, we got the axe, we got a bowl. We were going to recreate the kitchen and use that as a trigger object to do an EVP session. So I did not bring an axe in, swinging, yelling at kids or anything of that matter at all. I would not do that. So I remember we went in, and I was the person who brought the axe in, and I just got the weirdest emotional, like I felt like I had emotions that weren't mine, but I got very angry. I couldn't talk to Emily. And Emily and I, we're a team, but we're family, and we all butt heads, and we all sometimes argue, and that's fine. And like Emily and I have butt heads before, but Emily said, she told me like this wasn't me trying to argue with her. She could tell me something was different and something was weird, and I was like mad and furious. And I remember just feeling very angry. And I was sitting there in the parents' room, and in the parents' room, you can see where the axe hit the wall because he had murdered them with the blunt end, not the sharp end.
Yeah.
So when he hit them with the blunt end, when he brought the axe back, the sharp end went into the wall and it got stuck. So that mark is still there. And that's where I was sitting, was under that mark. And I remember Emily coming in and sitting on the parents' bed, and I got very mad at it. And I don't know why, because we had talked about what we were going to investigate and what we were going to do. And, you know, the caretaker said it was okay to sit on the bed, so we weren't disrespecting anything. But I was personally very upset that Emily was on the bed, which I thought was weird. So we came downstairs, we started arguing, and someone took a picture of me, or there's DVR footage of me holding the axe. And it doesn't even look like me. Like, my face is very strange looking. Right. And I guess they got uncomfortable that I was so angry holding an axe, if you can imagine. So Emily kicked me out of the house. You know, she was like, get out, get rid of the axe. I don't know what's going on with you. It's very strange. So I stomped out, and this is what Ryan was talking about. I went into base camp. I threw the door open. I remember yelling about something. I put the axe down, and then I sat out for a while. And when I came back in without the axe, I was myself again, and it was normal. But that time frame felt like an hour, and I could have sworn to you that I brought the axe upstairs, and that never happened. Like, Emily's like, you never brought the axe upstairs. And I was like, I really thought I did. And it really turned out to be like 15 minutes, not an hour.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so angry anymore. And I remember telling Emily that I felt like a very proud anger. And I don't know why I would say that. And I just didn't feel like myself. So there have been claims of people being like, I guess if you want to call it jumped or whatever, or taking on the emotions of whatever is there. And I think that's what I experienced. So, I mean, we started the night off with a bang. So,
sounds it.
I mean, although it's a personal experience, we do have that photo of me with the axe, and it just looks really, when I saw it, it gave me chills. I'm like, that doesn't even look like me.
Yeah.
And everyone on the team is like, that doesn't look like you. And it's just very strange. And that same night, like Ryan was saying, is that we had a really good thunderstorm before we started investigating. And I feel like that may have really taken apart and turned up like the energy a little bit.
Livened things up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was it's one of the most strange personal experiences I've ever had. But so that was kind of where that's where the night started, was me holding an axe, being angry at everybody, if you can imagine. So we did not bring the axe back in the rest of the night. Ryan wanted it locked in the car. He was very uncomfortable about it. This is his first experience.
Your first experience of it, and you've got an angry Gina with an axe. Yeah. I'm not coming back next week, guys.
Yeah, it was very that.
So we've had angry Gina with an axe and a time lapse. I'll call it that, a time lapse.
Yeah, it was strange.
Did you get any evidence of who could have been the murderer?
I don't think we had evidence of who the murderer could have been specifically, but we actually did catch good evidence that night. We have on EVP, we have people clapping, we have people stomping around, and the most, I would say one of the coolest things we have of that night is that we have the piano playing for 6 minutes. For 6 minutes, the piano played, and we have it on EVP. And what's cool is that it happens when we went to dinner. So we have cameras up, not on the computer, or not on the, I'm sorry, on the piano, but we have cameras up on all the doors. So you can actually hear us leave, get in our car, lock things up, and leave and go get dinner and come back. And that's something we do on a normal basis. Like, we set everything up, we go get dinner, and we talk what we're going to do and come back. So there's video evidence of no one coming into the building or leaving it. And we have an EVP rolling, and for 6 minutes you hear what starts off as one or two piano keys, and then it goes into like a full, like someone playing the piano, and
then
then
it
someone
can't be
claps.
noise contamination from any of the other houses.
No, and at first, I'll be honest with you, at first it sounded like a small dog barking, like a yap, like a really high pitched like dog bark.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I really wonder if that's just something in the neighborhood. But then as it goes on, it becomes very apparent that this is a piano playing. And when I was doing that evidence review, and usually we wait to our next meeting and we kind of come and present what we found with our evidence review. Mm-hmm. We'll be like, here's what we came up with. I called everyone. I said, stop what you're doing right now. Go to this file and listen to this timestamp because this is crazy. And sure enough, it was like the piano playing. We caught someone clapping. We have people stomping around upstairs, like just such strange noises that, and we're a team that, like, one of our mottos is when in doubt, throw it out. So if it can be explained, then we won't present it as evidence. So, unfortunately, I mean, we did all of that. Like, we did take the time to, like, ask questions about the murder and, like, the people who were murdered, but we didn't get so much that as we got maybe residual.
Yeah. Okay. One sec. Sorry, so you were saying it was predominantly, you think it was more residual than anything else. What were you about to say then, Ryan?
There was 2 other EVPs that we caught on my iPhone, actually, because the morning after we had cleaned up everything, took all the equipment out of the house, basically we were getting ready to leave, and myself, Emily, and our friend Sarah from Paris Soul Sisters joined us that night also, and we did a session up in the kids' room on the 2nd floor, and we sat in the closet for a little while and got an EVP of a little girl saying the name Mary, like with a question mark. And Mary was one of the children who were unfortunately murdered in the house. And that one sounded like just out of the... It's like in your ear, but I knew because I was sitting against a really tight closet wall. I'm just like, there's no possible way. But it sounded like she was in like another dimension saying this. It was so interesting. She goes, Mary? Like, and it goes up in pitch, and there's a question mark to the end of it. And so, I mean, we did get a child's voice on EVP, and then we were sitting on the bed in the kids' room, and we were doing a session. And in the middle of us talking about investigating during the daytime, we get this really high-pitched, like a baby coo, but it almost sounds like a dinosaur, like a flying dinosaur going, like, it's really interesting.
It's a good job Gina didn't hear that one then.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that.
No, it was kind of like it was like the coo of a child, but it sounded like it was coming out of like a bird almost, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't know. Okay. Super weird, but yeah. So a lot of EVPs in the house.
So would you say that the house is predominantly residual, or would you say it's still someone's still there? If you get what I mean.
Let me just back up a second and say it's hard for me to being at a place one time. It's hard for me to, mark it as residual or intelligent or something. I like to go to a place a few times before I make like an educated like decision on what's going on there. Sure. So just based off of what I have seen and based off of what I have experienced, I would say both. I think that there's definitely something of some intelligence still there. I don't know if it's original or if the place just sucks things in and things, it's flocked to that location because of the energy there. But both. I think like the evidence we caught could be residual with the stomping and the clapping and, if something intelligent decided to play the piano that day or if that's just some sort of residual energy left that happens many times. But the fact that I had my emotions played with tells me, I mean, something of some substance has to be in that house.
Yeah. Quite powerful as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So, is there any part of the building that, you say the barn is a nice place to be. Is there any part of the house itself that doesn't feel heavy? Or is it the whole place?
Gina, what do you think?
I don't... Man, I don't know. I actually thought the kitchen was nice. Like, it felt lighter in the kitchen. But I wouldn't say completely, like, untouched. Yeah, like, I feel like maybe the kitchen is maybe the lightest room on the location, or maybe the barn, but because the whole place does have a really strange feeling. And I don't know if that's just because you're, the history going there. Right. But the kitchen's okay. Everything else in that house is really strange. I did not go into it's not
cellar.
A basement. The cellar. I didn't go in the cellar, so I don't know how it felt down there, but I don't think we had a lot of evidence down there, so I'm not sure.
It was also raining, so it was very hard to run equipment down there safely. I think the parlor felt kind of neutral after our investigation. So we actually slept there overnight in the parlor, like air mattresses, next to each other. We all slept fine, I thought. Definitely the upstairs is really heavy. I remember when we walked through with Johnny, he gave us the tour. I just felt constricted in the stairwell, like something was pressing on me, or just really close quarters. It kind of feels like there's somebody on your back the whole time you're in there anyways.
Right.
I think we were doing a session in the parlor, and Gina was standing at the kitchen entrance looking in, and she felt someone run up on her, like a big rush, and I feel like that happened a couple different times that night in the house.
Not only did that happen to me at that spot where in the doorway where I felt like someone had run up behind me, but Sean, I think it was Sean from Apex, when they went. Yeah. Or did he not have the same feeling?
They have a lot of the same experiences that we did, which is very interesting.
Mm.
Oh, hold on. I'm forgetting something. One of the, I don't know how I could forget this. Sure. One of the weirdest things that happened to us that night was Emily was up in the girls' room, and it was later in the night. We had done a lot of work, and it was at that point where we kind of start to get a little slap happy. Mm-hmm. And, you start drinking the coffee, and you got to have some snacks. And, I take the walkie-talkie, and if you do the research on the place, you know that one of the people who had admitted to the murder, but I don't think he actually did it, he had said, what was his name, Ryan?
Reverend George Kelly.
Reverend George Kelly said,
him,
God told him to slay utterly.
Yeah.
So they're doing an EVP session up there, up in the girls' room. It doesn't look like much is going on. I'm at base camp. I'm just being silly, and I take the walkie-talkie and I press the button. I go, slay utterly, right, to freak them out. But something actually happens. So I click it and I say the word slay utterly, and the entire room shook. And I thought from base camp that the camera just kind of either fell off the tripod or moved or something. So I radio back in immediately and I go, hey, the camera fell, if you guys want to put it back. Yeah. And Emily goes, no, the whole house just shook. And I said, I'm watching every camera. I said, that's the only camera that shook. And I said, the rest of the house did not shake. And she goes, no. She goes, and they legitimately thought that we had an earthquake. And
did you check with the geological stuff that there hadn't been any kind of earth tremor?
The only earthquake was in Japan that night. We checked. We go that far. We check.
Yeah. Well, it's the same here. I would have done as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. And, there's train tracks, and no train went by. There were no big trucks. But if the house was going to shake, you would think the bottom would shake along with the top because they were on the top floor. Yeah. So we have video evidence of that room shaking immediately after I said that, and the rest of the house not shaking. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's just a phrase that upsets the house, or if there's some meaning to that, as if that guy actually did do something. But all I know is that I radioed in, I said those words, the entire room shook enough to scare them to come out of the house when the rest of the room didn't, or the rest of the house did not shake.
Wow. And
we have that up on YouTube, I think.
Cool. Well, we'll try and get the links up so they're on our page so people can have a look at that. On that note, that you're making the ground move for people. we'll close the interview down, because I think that's quite a good place to finish it. It does sound an amazing place, and say you you go into there with full respect for what happened to that poor family and their two friends. You don't go in there in a kind of laughing about them or whatever, but I mean, when you do read the details as to what happened to them all, it does break your heart. It makes you feel quite sick, really, to sort of that kind of massacre of a whole family and two house guests. But who have you got on your show this week, Gina? Who are you interviewing this week on your channel?
That's a good question. I'm
trying to plug your show as well.
No, I know. Let me back up for a second. So on Pair Exchange, I personally don't have anyone scheduled yet. We have a host and we have 4 co-hosts, and since I just did my last interview, we rotate through our co-hosts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who they have planned on for themselves, but we have just moved platforms, and one of the things we do is a Facebook Live event. So I actually do have some people. I'm not going to say who they are yet, so just stay tuned and wait. But I do have some cool people lined up, and I will let you know as soon as the dates are confirmed for who they are and when they are. But
and that's pure.
You'll recognize them.
Aye.
Yes.
You haven't asked me yet. It's not me.
I will, and I plan on it. I promise you. And then we're gonna get your Jack the Ripper friend too.
I'm gonna have a word with Andy for you. I promise. I will message him. I will ask him.
Awesome.
And this is
check out Pair Exchange Network on Facebook.
Awesome.
And all that stuff is, we kind of just went through a transformation, so all of this stuff is going to be coming out soon on who you can see and what times and dates and everything.
Brilliant. Well, thank you guys for being part of this. Well, tonight, where I am, this afternoon, where you are.
Us.
I'd love to have you come back on again sometime. Maybe get all of you on next time.
Yeah,
so get Emily in as well, and have all 3 of you chatting to me. That would be brilliant.
Of course, go check out 3 Girls in the Dark. Anything, like, we're on all social media. Like, just Google us and we'll pop up somewhere.
and as we've been saying, we take what we do very seriously, but we also like to have a good laugh with it. And you definitely have that. And you've got to check out their sites just to see Ryan twerking in those leggings, in those trousers. They really are something special. But I haven't seen any videos of you actually screaming, Ryan.
They're there. They're places, I'm sure.
I'll tag you. I'll tag you in them. We got them.
There's always more memories to be made.
Indeed. And when you guys do get across the pond, make sure you give me a call, and we'll sort you out some castles to go and see.
Oh,
awesome.
That's a dream.
There's plenty of them, believe me. Plenty of them. Well, thanks again, guys, for coming on the show tonight. I really, really do appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you both. I've had a good laugh. If not, some of the things you've come out with have made me chuckle quite a bit. It might even be the wine I'm drinking at the same time has helped. I don't know. But anyway, anyone who's been listening tonight, thank you so much for tuning in to Parasearch Radio and Haunted Histories. Don't forget, we have shows on 6 days of the week. They're all stored for you on YouTube, on Spreaker, and even you can get hold of them on SoundCloud now through our new website. But all that leaves me to say is have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.